You can start a successful, sustainable fashion brand even if you have a full-time job. And in fact, 95% of my past clients had another 9 to 5 while building their brand. It is tough, but it is doable. And in this episode, I'm going to break down the exact strategies, tactics, and tips you need to succeed. So if you have another 9 to 5 job or other streams of income as you're building your brand, there's a lot of pros to it, but there's also cons. So let's quickly talk about the pros, and then we can dive into the cons and how you can mitigate it. So the pros of having another full-time job as you build your brand are as follows. So first of all, you yourself do not need to rely on income from your brand. You can take the income from your 9 to 5 job, and that eliminates a lot of the financial stress, which is great because starting a brand can be really stressful already. And if you know that, your rent's going to be taken care of, you can feed yourself and all that stuff, then that stress evaporates and you can really focus on your brand. You also have more control over what your brand can look like because, again, finances aren't as stressful for you, so you can really reinvest back into the business. And also because you're not taking a loan or you're not having investors and you're self-funding your brand, you also have full autonomy and control over what your brand can look like. And that can be really helpful as well. And so essentially, you yourself are going to be funding your brand. And I always also get my clients to use pre-sales as another funding mechanism. And if you're at all curious about how much it costs to start and launch a fashion brand, I have a really good free training. It is only 30 minutes long. You're going to get a spreadsheet overviewing exactly what you should be spending your money on, how much it's all going to cost, as well as how you're going to get that funding. So I talk a lot about how you can self-fund, how you can do pre-sales, and you can access the training right now at www.recloseted.com/budget. The link will also be in the show notes for you. But that training will be really helpful to really figure out how much you need and where you're going to get that funding. So high level, those are the pros, right? You don't have to worry about money yourself. You can take a lot of that stress and mental load off. And then also you have full autonomy over your brand, which are some great pros. However, if you do have another 9 to 5 job or just contract gigs or whatever as you're running your brand, there are cons. And so on the flip side, you may experience a lack of time to work on your brand. If you just did your brand 24/7, you had all the time in the world to really think about it, strategize, and execute. If you have another 9 to 5 job though, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, you're pretty much working at this other job. And so there's less time overall for you to work on your business. And that may not be a bad thing. I'm going to talk about how you can mitigate these cons shortly. But the first one, realistically, is that you're going to have less time. Next, as a subsequent to the first con, which is a lack of time, the next thing that may happen is burnout because you are going to be working quite a bit. You're going to be working a 9 to 5 job and also building this brand. So that's a lot of work overall. And so let's talk about how you can mitigate this. So in regards to the lack of time to work on your brand, there's a few things I think you can leverage to help you with that. The first being that you need to have really strict boundaries at your workplace or at your 9 to 5. So remember that your 9 to 5 is just paying you to work 9 to 5. That is it. They're not paying you to work earlier or later. And so if you can be efficient and do all of your work in those hours, that is great. You don't need to feel guilty and stay late until your boss goes home, or you don't need to go to unnecessary happy hours after work if you don't need to. Really set strict boundaries on your time so that you actually have time to work on your business. I know that when you first set boundaries, it can be difficult, but remember, you're not really saying no to other people. You're saying yes to yourself and to your own business. So remember that. I think that will be helpful for you. But know that, it may come with time and you need to really be able to practice this. But just remember that if you don't spend time on your business, it's not going to happen. So you do need to set aside that time. The second tip is to work smarter, not harder. This is obvious. If you have a lack of time, then every single minute, every single second counts, and you want to make sure you're leveraging the right strategy so that you can be as successful as possible. And lucky for you, on top of the free funding training, I also have an amazing How to Launch a Profitable, Sustainable Fashion Brand masterclass. You can get my strategies that my clients use to have really successful launches. And I talk about how to create a product that people actually want and sells out at launch. I talk about sourcing secrets, so how to find sustainable materials and manufacturers. And then last but not least, I also talk about how to build an engaged community so they actually want to buy that launch. Those are 3 really important factors that will help contribute to the success of your brand. And like I said, it's absolutely free, so set aside the time to watch it. You can access it at recloseted.com/masterclass. Link will be in the show notes and in the description. But basically, I would go through that masterclass, get my strategies, and then execute to it. Because like I mentioned, you need to work smarter, not just harder, because you have limited time. And circling back on the working harder and not smarter, I think it's really important to soak up as many free resources as possible, such as this Recloseted radio podcast. I put out a lot of free content out there, and a lot of people have commented and said like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you put this out for free. Like, other people charge for this stuff. So make sure you take advantage, like take this time to really soak up everything I'm giving to you for free and execute to it, because the reason why I'm saying all of this is because I've either learned from it from personal experiences, or my clients have experienced mistakes, or they've gotten a lot of success from certain strategies. So there's a reason why, and there's a method to the madness. So take advantage of this. So listen to podcasts, invest in books, invest in mentors, courses, and programs. And as an example, we have our Launch Your Brand course, which takes aspiring slow fashion founders all the way from A to Z, all the way from idea to successful launch. And at the end of the day, sometimes you do need that shortcut to success, that guarantee that you will be able to launch and be successful. And so there's no shame in investing. And in fact, I think that it can fast track your success. And in many cases, when time is a scarce commodity for you, it's actually smarter to do that, so that you don't have to learn from your own mistakes. You don't have to waste time. You don't have to waste money. There's no shame in investing. And in fact, it really can fast track your success. And the last thing I want to say around the lack of time is that the reality is you are going to be working a lot. You're going to be working at your 9-to-5 job, and you're going to be putting in the hours to build this brand from scratch, which is no small feat in and of itself. And so when I was side hustling Recloseted, I worked a 9-to-5 job, did Recloseted, I worked a lot. I was working after work, I was working on the weekends. And so that's just the reality. And I'd rather you go into this with the right expectation, so that you aren't feeling like it's so easy for everyone else, or this should feel simple, this should feel in flow, or whatever. Like, it actually is tough, and you just need to know that going into it. That being said, though, it is 100% worth it, because this is something that you're likely passionate about, likely you've dreamt about or thought about it for years and years and years. So make it happen. Don't just have it stay a dream, right? So with that being said, because you are working a lot, I mentioned burnout. So let's talk about how you can control it and mitigate it as much as possible. A lot of this is from my own personal learnings while I was side hustling Recloseted, so I'm excited to share these with you. First of all, I think you really need to listen to your body and give yourself compassion, because the reality is you are working another job and you're building your business. And I've said this already, but it is a lot of work. So don't be discouraged if you are burning out, or if you do feel tired. Like, really give yourself compassion. And the reality is, if you are working a job and building your brand, it is going to take you longer to launch. Like, other people that are doing it full time maybe can get it done in 6 months or 8 months or a year. But for you, it might take twice as long or 3 times as long. And that's okay, so long as you're proud of the end product and you also do it in a way where it's like sustainable and balanced for you. So just give yourself grace and give yourself compassion. And I want to set the right expectations off the bat. The next thing I want you to do is make a list of how you recharge or re-energize. I like to sometimes think of ourselves as batteries, and if you're working and if you're utilizing a lot of energy, obviously your battery levels go down a little bit, but you need to dig deep within and figure out how you recharge. And that doesn't mean you need to spend a lot of money. Like, you don't need to go for a getaway every weekend, or you don't need to go to the spa, but maybe it's simply sleeping enough, or maybe it's simply meditating for a few minutes every day, or maybe it's simply walking outside. Like, what are the things that recharge you, give you joy, give you energy? Make a list of that. And I often tell my clients to group them into easy things you can do, such as sleeping, such as, eating some more vegetables, maybe going for a walk. Like, those are easy things. And then you have your medium things, which are maybe you take a weekend off, or you go for brunch, or you know what I mean? So based on how much time it takes and the financial implications potentially. And then you can have your longer things where it's actually a trip away, or turning off your phone for a whole weekend, like whatever that is. But figure out what recharges you, so that when you are burnt out, you can go back to that list and kind of implement some of those things. And a big mistake I made when I was side hustling is I would burn out and then realize I was burnt out. So it was very reactive. I would burn out and then start to put brakes on. I would sleep more, I would work less, and then I would feel better, and then I would work again, and then I would burn out. And it was just this very vicious cycle. And I would love you not to go through this, because every time you go through it, it's pretty rough. So instead of being reactive, I want you to be preventative. And how you do that is every single day, in the morning before you start work and in the evening before you go to bed, I want you to simply ask yourself how overwhelmed you feel on a scale of 1 to 10. And 10 being like you're burnt to a crisp, and 1 being you just came back from vacation or holiday and you feel amazing. So really ask yourself that. And if you're at a 6 or a 7 or an 8, you know you're approaching burnout, I want you to go back to your list of things that you can do to recharge yourself, and I want you to start to implement some of those practices so that, again, you can be preventative versus reactive. And so in conclusion, I hope that this was helpful for you. You can absolutely start and launch a successful, sustainable fashion brand with a 9-to-5 job. And like I mentioned, 95% of my past clients did just that. So it is doable, but I don't want to sit here and lie to you and say that it's easy, because it's not. You have to put in the work, but you do want to be strategic about it, which is why I made this podcast episode. And so you have a few action items. First of all, I want you to go through my How to Fund Your Fashion Line training if you haven't already, to really figure out how much it's going to cost you to start and launch this fashion brand. I'm a firm believer that you need to know the numbers before you go into anything so that you can prepare for it. And again, you can access that at recloseted.com/budget. The link will be in the show notes and also the description for you. And then secondly, I want you to go through my How to Launch a Profitable Sustainable Fashion Brand Masterclass. So in that masterclass, you're going to get the strategies to be able to launch a product that people actually want. You will learn how to source sustainable materials and ethical manufacturers, which everyone always asks me about. And then last but not least, you're going to learn how to build an engaged community that is ready to buy from you at launch. All 3 of those things are crucial and really assuring that your brand is as successful as possible. So you can access this masterclass, which is free, again, at recloseted.com/masterclass. Link will be in the show notes down in the description for you. And then I just want you to start to think about how you can recharge yourself, have realistic expectations going into this. Like, know that if you are working another 9-to-5 job, it is going to take longer for you, and know that you likely will be working a lot. Like, I want you to have the right expectations going into this, but know that myself and everyone in our community is cheering you on. We need your brand to be successful and to be able to launch. So go through this episode, go through my trainings, and then listen to some other podcast episodes. But as always, cheering you on, and together, let's transform the harmful fashion industry.